We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix and I'm broadcasting to you live from South Central Texas, aka Austin, home of Alex Jones, Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, and myself, Robert Phoenix. And today's show is going to be a pretty action-packed show. We've got wall-to-wall content from start to finish here. In the first hour, we're going to be joined by John Trudell, one of the more preeminent activists of our time, a Native American activist who has turned his attention to hemp and the hemp industry and the liberation of hemp from the shackles of its criminal status here within the borders of the 48 contiguous states and also Hawaii and Alaska. And we're going to be discussing the prospect of growing hemp on the reservation, and as a result of the reservation's quote-unquote sovereign status. We're going to get into that with John, and we're going to talk about the Project Heart hemp experience, which is his baby right now. And then after we spend some time with John and find out what's happening with him and his world, we're going to bring on Debby Goldsberry, who is one of the leading activists and proponents of medicinal marijuana. She was named NORML's Woman of the Year 2 years in a row for her tireless efforts to continue the fight to get medicinal marijuana into the hands of people that really need it. And Debby also happens to be a friend. And then in the final part of the show, we're going to bring Willow on, and Willow is an old friend, and she's an astrologer and an activist as well, and we're going to be talking about alfalfa and the threat to alfalfa, and especially as it relates to Sirius Direct, which is an astrological movement up there in the heavens, and we'll talk to her about that, and really how vital it is that people become aware of the plight of alfalfa, and that's at the end of the show. One of the interesting things that's crossed my path here, just as I was getting ready to get into the show and do some research, is this just dropped in the last hour. This is from Washington Whispers, and I'll tell you how timely this show is. The title of the piece is Industrial Hemp Legislation First Push by Ron Paul Could Drop in Senate Next Week. Okay, let me read that again. Industrial hemp legislation first pushed by Ron Paul could drop in Senate next week. So this piece is an hour old. It's been on the internet for 1 hour. I'll read this to you. Has Capitol Hill suddenly gone green? Just a day after Democratic Representative Jared Paula of Colorado introduced legislation to decriminalize marijuana, Republican Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky introduced another bill Thursday in support of industrial hemp, currently illegal in the U.S. because it comes from the same plant as marijuana. And now Senator Rand Paul's office tells Whispers it could introduce companion legislation in the Senate as soon as next week. In late January, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he'd throw his support behind industrial hemp, a surprise endorsement from a longtime opponent of marijuana. McConnell cited conversations he'd had with Paul, and the Huffington Post's Ryan Grimm points out the change came after the Kentucky senator hired Jesse Benton to run his 2014 election campaign. Benton is the former campaign manager of Paul's father, former Texas Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul. Now, there is a rift in the Ron Paul camp based on what Jesse Benton did during the Ron Paul campaign. So it's interesting that somehow Benton would be a key player here in this hemp legislation. Well, let's read on. Ron Paul is seen as the father of industrial hemp on Capitol Hill, having first sponsored a bill in the House in 2005, and then introducing a similar bill every 2 years for the rest of his tenure. The first bill Paul introduced got 11 co-sponsors, and each year the number climbed higher. His last bill in 2011 had 37 co-sponsors. Vote Hemp, the main group lobbying in Washington for industrial hemp, credits Paul for the sea change on Capitol Hill as well. Paul set everything in motion. He was the one who came up with the Industrial Hemp Farming Act. It is his three-pronged approach. National Outreach Coordinator for Vote Hemp, Tom Murphy, tells Whispers. The bill the younger Paul is set to introduce in the Senate will include the same three-pronged approach, which is to define industrial hemp, remove it from the controlled substances list, and leave regulations up to the states. And just as Ron Paul did, the senators getting behind industrial hemp have all emphasized its economic benefits. The utilization of hemp to produce everything from clothing to paper is real, McConnell said in the statement, and if there is a capacity to center a new domestic industry in Kentucky that will create jobs in these difficult economic times, that sounds like a good thing to me. Of course, what he's referring to is the tobacco industry, which is having more and more problems as a flourishing industry as it gets harder and harder and more expensive to actually produce tobacco. And in fact, tobacco is one of these substances that seems to be on its way out, in fact, being legislated out by Obamacare, because if you are a tobacco user under Obamacare, I think you're hit with, a 20% increase in your Obamacare rate. So the tobacco industry, while it will never go away, is on its heels, and the tobacco farmers in Kentucky need something else. They need a different crop to grow instead of tobacco. And I believe that they would gladly transfer their sweat and their labor into hemp from tobacco. Megan Stiles, a spokeswoman for Ron Paul's political organization Campaign for Liberty, says industrial hemp is just one of many issues Paul started that someone else will finish. One of his great legacies was that he was able to bring attention and awareness to so many different issues, she says. So there we go. We have Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Thomas Massie all dropping in on the hemp issue. And as early as next week, we could see a break in the logjam, or at least we'll know where the Obama administration and some of the other people on Capitol Hill are going to be in response to the legalization of hemp. So what I want to do now is I want to play a little bit of music and see if we can track down John here and make sure he gets into the queue. I'm going to play a track by John. It's called Grass Fire, and it's a spoken word piece that he specializes in, and it has to do with cannabis and hemp and all the other related cannabinoids that go along with these two plants. So here's Grass Fire by John Trudell, and hopefully by the time the track ends, we'll have John in the queue and ready to go and talk about his latest project, Project Heart Hemp. Here we go. John Trudell, Grass Fire.
between the blues. There are good days and bad days, with everything and nothing to lose. While the setting sun never sits, and the night has no limits. The void between freedom and free, dealing with the unnatural reality, a need to see, a need to be. Grass fire, my DNA needs THC.
Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns. Like a grass fire.
In the unnatural society, been trying to maintain, while the sane appear to be clearly insane, with no way to explain. Outlasting the great lie, a sparking spark does my mind. Grass fire, pulling the sky, breathing in sativa's design.
That was Grass Fire, John Trudell, and we're just waiting for John to get in here, and so we can start talking about hemp and all of its wonderful uses. Let me just go through some of the background on hemp. So the history and development of hemp. The first time hemp shows up, it's in the Western Han Dynasty, okay? And that's, we're talking about 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's actually incredible how long hemp has been around. St. Petersburg, Russia, a paper mill out of Goznak, which opened in 1818, it actually used hemp as its main input material. So again, a very early source of paper. Paper from the mill was used in the printing of banknotes. So it's been on money, stamp paper, credit bills, postal stamps, bonds, stocks. In 1916, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Chief Scientists Lister Hoxsey Dewey and Jason L. Merrill created paper made from hemp pulp and concluded that paper from hemp was favorable in comparison with those used from pulp wood. Modern research has not confirmed the positive findings about hemp herds. They're only 32 and 38% cellulose. The actual production of hemp fiber in the U.S. continued to decline until 1933 to around 500 tons a year. Between 1934 and 35, the cultivation of hemp began to increase, but still at a very low level and with no significant increase of paper from hemp. There was a major push during World War II to grow a lot more hemp. And one of the reasons why they were growing a significant amount of hemp during World War II, obviously, was for the war effort. In fact, farmers were rewarded for being able to plant and create hemp. One of the other interesting uses for hemp is weed control. This is actually really organic use for hemp because because of its height and dense foliage, the planting of it as a density crop, it's incredibly effective, and it's a long-used method of killing tough weeds in farming. So you minimize the pool of weed seeds by planting hemp in the soil. By using hemp, farmers can avoid the use of pesticides. That's a novel thought, isn't it? To help gain organic certification and to gain the benefits of crop rotation. So we don't need Monsanto. We don't need Terminator seeds. We don't need Roundup. I mean, hemp can actually do the trick. It's wonderful. Biofuels such as diesel and biodiesel, alcohol fuel, they can all be made from hemp, and the seeds and the stalks. It's a fermentation process. In the fermentation plant as a whole, you can ferment the entire plant. Unlike, say, corn, generally speaking, you can only really ferment the actual kernels of the corn itself. I know this because I watch moonshiners. Filtered hemp can be used directly to power diesel engines. In 1892, Rudolf Diesel invented the diesel engine, which he intended to fuel by a variety of fuels, especially vegetable and seed oils, which earlier were used for oil lamps. So here's another way that we can use hemp and make it a part of our lives in a very, very specific way. So what I'm trying to do here now is I'm trying to track down John so we can get him on the program, and you can stop listening to me and listen to him. Tell you what I'm going to do. Why don't we do this? Why don't I play a video here of John, and let's find out some of the things going on with him in terms of the background with his hemp project, and we'll go from there. Let's do this. Let's plug this in. Here we go. So let's play this. So this is him, and this is about a 10-minute video. It's called the Pine Ridge Hemp Project, and let's bring this up here so you can get a background into what he's doing, and I can find some time here to track him down. Here we go. Let's see what we got here. Pine Ridge Hemp. I just have to cycle through some of the detritus. All right, here we go. Let's bring on at least some background with John with the Pine Ridge Hemp Project.
On the impoverished Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, a small group of Native Americans planted seeds. These seeds they hoped would bless the harsh land with an environmentally sustainable cash crop. The seeds they planted were cannabis hemp.
Hey, John, is that
Hello.
you?
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, were you trying to find me?
Yeah, I was trying to find you, and I was playing one of your videos while I was trying to find you.
Oh, okay. So okay. No problem.
All right, well, we found each other. Well, welcome to the show, John. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, no problem. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to call you or you were supposed to call me. And
yeah, I didn't have your number, so I was assuming that we would link up psychically first, and then they would all happen and fall together. But here we go.
All right,
so, welcome, man. I just one of the things I wanted to sort of jump off here with, and then we're going to get into hemp, and I think it will be a pretty thorough conversation on hemp. But the first time I came in contact with you was at a screening for the documentary on your life, Trudell, and this was in Marin County. I believe it was in Tiburon or Larkspur. I think it might have been Larkspur. And
Larkspur.
Yeah, and you were there after the screening of the documentary. And one of the things that really jumped out at me when you spoke to the crowd, which was, I would say probably about 90% middle class, Caucasian, is you said, and this was during the Bush administration, you said essentially that you are us now, that the people in the audience were now the Native Americans, or at least they were the people that had the crosshairs on them. And I remember looking around at people when you said that, and sort of the state of shock, and the look in their eyes was palpable. And I wanted to ask you, John, if you still feel that way. Where we are in 2013, I guess it might have been about 6 or 7 years after you made that statement. Do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like that people in general are in a pretty precarious position in terms of relationship to the government and some of the other things that you were alluding to that day?
I think their situation is actually more precarious. I just see it just slowly. It's just becoming acceptable to people, the inequities, whether it's from protecting the Wall Street privilege to, you got a president that has hit list, right? And, and the economy for a great many people isn't really changing. Not really, and when you look at civil liberties, you look at what's going on. I don't think it's any lighter. It's domination by erosion. And that's what's going on. Just domination by erosion. The erosion of people's expectations. The erosion of just the erosion of their expectations. Therefore, their rights. And I think that's just kind of how this thing is passing. It's almost like a disease instead of some kind of a living system. It just progresses. Because people aren't aware that it's really a disease. Yeah,
you were extremely well. You were in the mix of a lot of intensity in the 60s and the 70s, and there that was a period in time was quite turbulent. And you and the American Indian movement weren't alone. There were other groups, obviously, that were very active. And what I want to ask you, John, is what happened? Not to you, but what happened to the people that were active during that time? And what happened to the spirit of that activism? Why did it go away, or why is it asleep now? Why is it dormant?
Well, it's things like, in a way, to me, I kind of look at everything as just being energy. Human being is the energy, and the energy that the human puts into any given thing is, well, anyway, that's kind of how I look at things going on. And because I look back at that period of time, and because I had my own wondering about this too. But what I think it is my generation, we didn't really learn anything from the experience that we could digest, analyze, evaluate, and hand back to the next generation or the people coming.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't analyze our experience. So basically the people that are coming are coming in and basically repeating the same basic energy patterns that we put into a system. They're putting it in the same terminology technology changes because generation and technology changes, right? But generally speaking, the energy patterns are the same. We passed on the same energy patterns to the next generation. And our energy patterns were really based upon our emotional belief systems. So that's what we passed on. Because during my generation's thing, I mean, when you just looking at it as pure, just from the terms of energy, we didn't use the power of our intelligence, our creative mind. We didn't use the energy in our intelligence to really think. I mean, to think to see with our thinking. See, so we didn't have a clarity. There was a certain clarity we didn't have, a certain coherency we didn't have. We had all this emotional idealism and feel good, but there was a certain clarity we were missing. So we walked into the same energy pattern that the dominating class has been recycling for generations. It's like an energy pattern. Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's feeling to me like, in some ways, like it's a closed loop energy pattern, or what some of us might term almost a matrix. And how do we break out of this, John?
We think our way out, man. Think our way out of what we think our way out of what we believed our way into. The number one thing is very, I think, important to this is we have to recognize ourselves individually. We have to recognize who we are as human beings. It's important that we like ourselves because we have no reason not to. And that's part of the whole purpose of life is we were put here to like ourselves. And that way, therefore, we'd be able to like life. Right. I mean, kind of generally in the DNA and all the stuff, I think there's some of that kind of energy floating around. So for us as human beings, recognize ourselves as human beings. Our power comes from our being. Like ourselves, and use and respect. See, because to me, whoever we are, if in any way, shape, or form we respect a creator idea or a creator concept, we accept a concept of something sacred. If that's a part of what our consciousness is, then I think we need to show respect to that consciousness by respecting our intelligence and using our intelligence clearly and coherently. Understanding the gift of power that our intelligence is, because as human beings, how we manifest our power through our intelligence, the power of our being. And if the power of our being is distorted by the fears and the psychological trauma and damage that civilization imposes as a part of the civilizing process, well then, that's the way we're going to go, and it'll be unclear. We won't have any stability. We won't have any sense of who we are. We won't have any balance. See, so it's all in the thinking, how we use the power that is generated through our thinking process. And I think to me it comes back to that.
Yeah.
Because whatever solution, whatever problem there is that we want to address, it's about energy. The energy we take into creating a solution is the energy that will be in that solution. And if the energy that we take in that solution is low self-esteem, is fear-based, it's reactionary-based, it's not, then that's the energy we're going to put into the solution. That's how this energy pattern works. That's how this thing works.
Right.
Right? So we think our way out of it. We respect the power of our intelligence and use it to think, rather than to believe. There's a difference in thinking and believing. And how psychologically we've been imprinted with it. It's like almost like oming. How many times do we hear people say, I believe? It's like a self-hypnosis. Deactivate the thinking process and channel and reroute that energy, all right, into a believing energy. See, because a believing energy isn't active. It's just there.
Yeah.
Where the thinking energy, it represents energy movement. It represents life in a different kind of way. See, so it's about us thinking. And to me, that's how we show respect to whatever our creator consciousness is. It's how we show respect to ourselves. And so anyway, we think our way out. You know, and what happened, and so originally, the generation thing is, because of the way this energy pattern works, within each generation, there will be these peak resistors or whatever, but the energy reaches a peak, but see, it can't sustain itself. You know what I mean? It just kind of peaks out.
Right.
So whatever issues my generation raised, see, we couldn't sustain it, we couldn't carry, because we didn't learn to understand the energy patterns. You know, so we didn't think. You know, and it breaks down into just human consciousness now. You know, and when I look at these human weaknesses and these doubts and these things, we got to do this to, you know, the egos and the prides and stuff. So a lot of my generation, see, well, we got recognition for being active and doing whatever it is we did, and I'm not disrespecting us, but to me, reality. So all this stuff happening, and then we got to be holders. See, and it's almost like we take a point of pride in the youngers resisting, whether it's Occupy, but putting up resistance. You know, it's like it's almost like I sense there's this kind of pride in seeing them do that, when actually I think, well, no, you know, what we should have done is we should have learned our lesson, and we should be saying to these next generations, all right, look, you know, you got to do it different.
Right. Yeah.
But we're not.
Yeah.
We're encouraging it. So we're encouraging the same energy pattern. So that tells me we didn't understand, you know, because what my generation missed, just kind of generally speaking, we look for political solutions. We look for economic solutions or or gender solutions. We look for rape. Anyway, we look for these solutions in the form of dealing with economics or political or whatever. But I'm telling you, it's the energy put into the effort.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's how we use the energy to the effort. And we are the energy that we use. You know what I mean? Because in practical reality, we are alternative energy. We're going to complain against the bad guys because they're polluting and misusing energy and not. But hey, we are energy.
Yeah.
Are we using our energy any more coherently? Are we toxifying our own the energy of our being through fears, doubts, whatever all the stuff is that we've been imprinted with?
Right.
But anyway, so when I look at it, I think it's important that we start to look at it as energy.
Yeah.
How do we find a solution to these social, economic, these social outer world problems? We find a solution to it through how we approach the energy that goes into it and understanding the energy. And I think when that's done with clarity and coherency, you will come up with clear and coherent. But when the energy put into it, just emotional reactionary, is based around forced imposed belief systems, all right, then that's the energy be created, a dysfunctional energy.
You know, John, you bring up some amazing points here. And when I hear the reaction piece, I think about how divided the country is, the divide and conquer strategy, and how reactionary or being reactionary and reactionism is a response, a natural reaction to being divided and polarized as a nation. How do you see this polarity, and how do we work around it or through it or beyond it or above it?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a natural reaction. I think it's an imprinted reaction.
Right.
It's an unnatural response, all right, of humanity being on this kind of edge with humanity. So I think it's an imprinted reaction by those who would manipulate us. But what it comes back to, see, we need to think. We really need to think. You know, we need to understand we need to think, all right? Power. But this is only something. This is something that can be. It's an individual approach before it can be a collective approach. But as an individual approach, it can become a very effective collective approach. It's like the power that we have as human beings. How much power we have that we manifest through our intelligence. How bad can you make when you're feeling powerless and depressed? When you're feeling all the negatives, how bad can you make yourself feel? with your fears, your doubts, and your insecurities. Okay, what kind of energy can you generate that way? And then how does it affect the people around you? All right? So whatever's going on, you got power. I mean, one, I'm not telling you specifically, but one has power.
Right.
Now, but that's the power of the creative mind intelligence being used chaotically, incoherently, and that's the kind of energy and power it's generating. But now imagine if we thought things out clearly and coherently, we would still be generating the same kind of power. And that's the power that we would be spreading out, that people would be affected with.
Right.
All right? See, so I mean,
with the one, starting with the one and getting coherent with the one.
Yes, see, and because, and when you think about it, see, about this belief stuff, to me, when we believe, it really means we don't know. But we won't say we don't know. We're going to say we believe.
Right.
But in reality, either we know or we don't know, and all the rest of it's up for toss. I mean, to me, in reality. But see, we've been imprinted to believe what the controlling class wants us to believe, to use our intelligence to perceive reality through how through beliefs that they have imposed upon us.
Right.
All right? And it's okay, yes, all right. So when you think about this, and the thing about thinking, the power of thinking and the power of believing, but every negative in your self-esteem, I guarantee you didn't think it up. Somebody put it there, imprinted it there until you believed it. So, all right, and this, and it's that kind of dynamic that's been going on and messing with our individual collective psyche.
Right. Absolutely.
But the power of our intelligence, see, it's like a decision we make. If we make the decision, we're going to, I'm going to check this out. If we just make the decision, hold on, I'm going to make it as clear and coherent as I possibly can, as often as I can. If we make the decision and head in that direction, then it kind of just self-supports, feeds itself, so to speak.
Right. Right.
Self-nourishes itself.
Right. Well, let's shift the energy just a little bit, and let's talk about hemp, because you've got a lot of energy around hemp, and I can see why, and I think that this is a really important issue. I think that we can all get passionate about hemp, because I personally believe that it's one of the substances that can, I think, save the United States economy and promote innovation and promote abundance and a lot of other really wonderful things in our lives. So let's jump into that. When did you get really turned on by hemp in terms of the industrial use of it?
I'm trying to remember that because, I can't say any one specific thing, but it's like I lose track of time, all right? So I don't really remember when was. All right. But at some point, you're not too long ago.
Right.
Now kind of looking at what's going on, with all the dissatisfaction and the polarization and the right and the left and within, all the environmental, all the movement, social justice, all this terminology and stuff goes on, social justice, and all these things, and I'm looking at it, and kind of, well, it's a whole bunch of chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of good intentions, this and that, no offense or disrespect to anyone, but this is all, just, to me, a collective hive of chaos.
Yeah.
That in its form of chaos, its progress and progression is just surviving. You know what I mean? Nothing else, and that's considered to be progression, just surviving, right? And I see that in what I consider to be a lot of perceptions, whether it's about the environment, whatever, and a lot of emotional just stuff. I mean, here again, emotionally reacting to fears and things like that. And because I kind of look at it, well, whatever we're doing, if it's about the earth and the environment or whatever, see, to me, I think it's cooler and cleaner if it's coming because we really care.
Right.
All right. But see, too much of the chaotic perceptions that are going on are based upon individual fears. See, people are afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It's fear-based. It isn't care-based.
Right.
All right, and it's got a lot to do with things. Because the energy you put into a solution is the energy that's going to be in it. And so anyway, I'm going through somewhere in all of that. Hemp came into my consciousness somehow. I don't remember exactly, but it showed up in my consciousness, and it was. And I looked at it, and I understood. So I started looking at it, and I understood our relationship to the plant. And because to me, and I don't look at it I look at it from what we'll call environment, agriculture, and industry, which turn all into economics. But I don't, and I'm in the United States, so that's what I deal with. But I think on a global perspective, hemp is a necessary element to bring back into the human usage reality, recognition reality. Because, from the beginning of the evolution of human civilization, so to speak, hemp was somewhere there. They made their sales, they ate it, but it's been human usage throughout the evolution of human civilization as we know it. And right up until, an active part of the American scene right up into the 1800s. Mm-hmm. Right? Like in the mid-1880s, it was the largest cultivated crop on the planet. So it's not happening here. And then I realized, we had these cannabinoid receptors inside of our body, all distributed it out, right, and passed through it. Mm-hmm. And passing through, so there's something energetically. But my point being is that hemp was there as a resource for food, shelter. It has been with us as a resource for basic needs through our whole evolutionary process. All right, and we had a relationship with it and an understanding with it.
So it's synonymous with our story. It is part of our story.
It's part of our story. And so when I looked at it in that context, and then I realized, not only that, and then this is the medical marijuana people. See, because they got this acceptance of medical marijuana by the application of their energy and but they got medical marijuana accepted as a medicine for the people, the human medicine. And I started thinking, well, hemp is earth medicine. It's a medicine for the earth. Because it doesn't need pesticides, it doesn't need all of the chemical warfare stuff. It actually keeps a balance with the earth,
That's
just
right.
the way that it grows, just the nature of hemp. And I thought, well, so this maybe kind of think abstractly, but it's like, well, it kind of helped me. I mean, actually, because it kind of helped me to see, well, even here we are, we're doing something, we'll put the hardest core human effort into what our human wants are. We wanted medical marijuana as medicine for us, the humans.
Right.
Right? And so we put the hardest core of that, but yet at the same time, here's a medicine, this industrial hemp, the larger aspect of hemp, the industrial hemp aspect of it is a medicine for the earth.
Right.
And so to me, I kind of thought, well, for me, to find something that is to do that's right to me, that's for more than just the human aspect of us, for the planet herself. And that to me is hemp.
Right. Can you?
Right? I mean, basically that's what it is.
Can you talk about the efforts to grow hemp on the reservation? And because I had a conversation with a common friend of ours, Linda, and this was before I had come up with the idea of trying to get you on the show to talk about this. And I said to her, I said, I think really the place where this needs to be, really tested out, both from a legal perspective and from a growing perspective, is the reservations. And she agreed. So can you fill us in on what's happening in terms of your efforts on that front?
Well, I don't agree with that approach, all right? But my reasons being, Indians got nothing to fight back with, man. They're under all the reservations, right? All the reservations are under federal jurisdiction.
I see.
The Department of Interior, the FBI, all the federal apparatus. The tribes are basically under their control, right? And the tribes don't have the money, all right, to wage the economics that would need to be put into fighting this in the legal arena.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have access to the resources. Where this would, but many of the tribes want for it. I mean, it's like 9 or 10 or 11 states have passed industrial hemp usage within the state, but they can't get past the federal ban.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of tribes, and it would be a beneficial, environmental, economically feasible for many tribes to have this, but they're not in a position where they could wage that. I think if it's going to be waged, if someone wants to take it, to challenge it, it needs to be the farmers.
Mm-hmm. It
needs to come out of the farmers. I mean, practical reality. It needs to come out of the white farming community. All right, because a lot of people that oppose it, they come out of that community. And I'm not being racist. This is just about a racial, racial elements to all of this, and I think that that's an important component to it coming out of. All right, the white farmers.
Right.
Because and I think that they have a valid, and the Indians, they come at it their way, and the hemp industries association people come at it their way, the vote hemp people, all the different hemp entities. But I really think farmers are crucial to this.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think if it came from the farmers, it could generate the political energy, all right, and outside energy that's necessary to sustain it and help to carry it. Just because of the awareness, of medical marijuana and hemp, all the stuff, the awareness is there. I think that they could carry it a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More than any other entity at this time.
Before you came on today, I read a piece that just broke about an hour ago. Apparently, Rand Paul is going to be introducing industrial hemp legislation into the Senate next week, and Thomas Massey, who's a congressman from Rand Paul's state of Kentucky, is doing the same thing on the House side. What's your take on this? Where do you think we are temperature-wise with actually making some progress? Mitch McConnell, a marijuana opponent, has now decided to throw his shoulder behind hemp. There seems to be some movement happening here, John. What's your take?
No, see, what we would call to me, I look at it as energy. There's all this energy out there,
mm-hmm.
all right, that is hemp-connected energy through these groups. And these people pass it, but all the activity that's going on by different hemp supporters. See, so what I see is I think that there's a larger hemp energy field out there than we're really aware of. And it's active, but it's kind of disjointedly active.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of these things are good things. It's really a matter of how do we find a way to synchronize all these different groups, all this different energy, so that it has a certain synchronicity to it.
Right.
Rather than the randomness to it.
Right.
Yeah. Because when I look at what's going on, because economics and environments and stuff, to us what we're looking at is let's just raise the consciousness of hemp. See if we can get people thinking about hemp. See if we can get them talking about hemp and thinking about hemp. Then we're generating some energy and the common sense that the whole hemp issue makes for economics and environment. Just the plain, flat, factual common sense that it makes, we think will be enough, all right, to get people to go with this. But it's got to be out there in dialogue. It's got to be brought to people's attention.
Yeah.
because one of the realities to this, you know, the thing on marijuana, the marijuana aspect of this, when the feds waged their war on marijuana back in the early 1900s and the 30s, and again where they made it a class 1 felony drug or whatever in the 70s or whatever, but when they waged these wars on marijuana, see, it wasn't really about the marijuana. The marijuana was a diversion. It was about the hemp.
Right.
All right? Because if you get right down, and we think people will understand this, all right, just because of the material needs of this society at this time, the economics of industrial hemp will dwarf the economics of medicinal and recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
And how it, will dwarf it. Because of the potential usage of hemp.
Yeah.
In every aspect, anything they can make out, anything they use oil in, they can use hemp. Anything they do about plastics, they can replace that, they can do hemp. And cotton is one of the most chemically laden crops in the world just to get it to survive. And that can be reduced because hemp can do it better. And paper, trees, all that. So, and the other thing to it, and this is what, because when we're looking at this, we'd really like the environmentalists under their different outfits, so to speak, to really kind of to take into consideration the reality of hemp as a part of an environmental solution. Not give up their approach if it's solar or wind or whatever, but not to give up their stuff, but to be inclusive of hemp. Because the thing that hemp will do, and it'll start doing it now, and it's economic. You don't have to have thousands of dollars to set up. What hemp will do now is it will start creating oxygen for a sky that is being suffocated with carbon dioxide, this global warming thing. And when you have, and like remember, hemp was the largest cultivated crop on this planet up until the mid-1880s. So if that became a reality, again, the largest cultivated crop on this planet, it would meet so many needs, and it would be healthy for the earth, and it would be healthy for the sky. It would be literally a union between earth and sky. So anyway.
Well, it would also.
Pardon?
I would also be Monsanto's worst friend, worst enemy. I mean, you bring in hemp, you don't need Roundup, you don't need Terminator seeds. Hemp can control large patches of pernicious weeds if you do some companion planting. So automatically you would take out one of the grossest manufacturers of chemical fertilizer and pesticides on the planet. I mean, it would be a serious threat to Monsanto, which in some ways makes it even more difficult to legalize. But also, John, I think, coming from just the innovation perspective, I mean, hemp is as close as you get to free energy, as far as I'm concerned, because you can do so much with it, and it would ignite the moribund spirit of Americans who want to make the world a better place, who enjoy novelty, who love to be inventive. This is exactly what we need.
And I think, I mean, there's Monsanto, there's the oil companies. I mean, there's all this opposition. Yeah, I get that part. But the deal is, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And a part of that, it is what it is. To me, in the end, it's a decision that gets made, and we are a part of that decision-making process.
Right.
Do we want a better, healthier environment more than the bad guys want to get away with plundering it? It's just, in the end, who wants it more?
Yeah, you're right. It really comes down to that.
That's right. And so, we make an individual decision, all right? And remember, we make an individual decision, and whatever clarity and coherency and sense that is in our thinking process, we can generate that the same way we can generate our depressions in our stuff. See, so it's how we perceive and participate.
Yeah.
And not, and to me it's a matter of just try to make the best sense you can. Don't try to talk anybody into nothing. You got to talk them into it. You can't trust them in the long run. I guarantee you. All right?
That's a great.
Right?
I love that.
But it's the truth.
Yeah.
Trust me, it is. So the deal is make it the best sense you can at any given time, right? And don't try to argue anybody into nothing. Just say, hey, this is how I see it, whatever. And just see where those pieces of coherency and clarity and common senses, see where they fall.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we can do.
I think that's a major place to start for sure.
Yeah, well, because to me the reality is we can rush and try to fast track, we can do whatever, but the deal is the energy that goes into creating a solution is the energy that's going to be in the solution. And if the energy that goes into creating a solution is, well, we're in a rush, we don't really want to understand, we just want to get there, then that's what will be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as an individual human being with intelligence, if I enable that and support that, then I got no right to be blaming nobody for nothing.
Yeah.
If I'm not willing to take the responsibility for what I'm about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's about being as clear as I can about what I'm doing.
It's interesting. I remember going back in time to that day where you spoke after the documentary, which I recommend, by the way, if nobody's ever seen the documentary on you by Heather Ray Trudell, I highly recommend it. Gives a great overview and synopsis of John's life. But the clarity and the coherence was a message that you were delivering then. So this is something that's been consistent with you for a long time now.
Yeah, well, if you say so. I can't remember.
Well, for me, it's a long time, John, okay? We're living in quantum time as far as I'm concerned. Let's talk a little bit about Project Heart Hemp. And that's your website, and you've got it on Facebook. Talk a little bit about that and how people can interact with you if they want to get involved and put their energy into this.
Okay. HempsteadProjectHeart.com, right.
Okay.
And Heart, Project Heart, but Heart stands for Hemp Energy Alternative Resource Technologies. And basically, we're a website that's there. We're not interactive at the moment, but sometime here before much time passes, it will be an interactive website. But basically, the website is, we're talking about what our attitude about things is. There's a series of statements on there, all right, explaining where we're coming from and why we are looking at hemp. And then there are links. We have a set up for links off into the world of hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And our emphasis is industrial hemp. We're not taking on the medical marijuana issue. We think hemp needs to be recognized as its own entity, because it is its own entity. And so we're putting out what our attitudes are and what we have to say, and we're coming as the olders and the youngers. That's who's behind all this, the olders and the youngers. And the olders are people that are older, right?
Right.
But they haven't straightened up enough yet to be elders, okay? And haven't figured out enough yet. And the youngers would be, well, people that are coming from the next generation, so there could be some kind of inner communication. All right? So that's kind of conceptually what the olders and the youngers are. And our objective is to see how much energy we can generate around hemp.
Right.
But we're talking about the energy of thinking and consciousness.
Right.
Basically, we're looking for people who get what we're saying, because if they get it, then they will act upon that. We know this. You know what I mean? It's just we got to find our way to these ones. We're not trying to convince people or anything. We're not. It's not about arguing with people about stuff. No, hey, this is where we are, where we're coming from, and we're looking for the quality of people that just understand the need for this, right? Of what we're talking about. And the two names I will put out, that this is something that started with Willie Nelson. So this is a project we have going, the Hempstead Project Heart.
Mm-hmm.
But our objective is vote hemp in 2016. We'll just call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really that. But what I mean by vote hemp, I'm not saying it in a political kind of sense, actually. I mean, realistically, what I'm just saying is by the year 2016, how much can we make hemp be a part of the national dialogue?
Right.
Because if it's that, then people are thinking about it, right? And then that means the chances of there being accomplishment now become better. And especially when you look at what's going on in, Colorado and Washington legalizing the recreational use, right? And in all the medical marijuana states and all these other states that have passed the acceptance of industrial hemp, but they can't act on it. So you look at all of that going on. So it's a matter of, well, let's just see. Because it's important. Because, but I don't want to sound like a fanatic, because I'm really not. But well, most of the time. But when I really look at it, I think it would be it's one of the most important environmental positions we can take. See, economics, that's all addressing for human need and the people, whatever they need. But just basic for the planet herself, I think this would be the strongest, all right, one of the strongest environmental statements we can make.
Uh-huh.
And that's because it's healthy for the planet. This is why I would like to see environmentalists, all the other, people get behind understanding this. Because, it's just about, because, anyway, it meets so many needs.
Yeah.
It's actually a stand. It's actually a position that we could take. That we could take, that we all have in common. But we'll see. We'll see how many people get what I'm talking about. If people don't get it, then it ain't going to happen, right? But if there's enough people that get it, right, then we'll see.
So if people want to interact with you in the project, they can go to the website, they can go to Facebook. Let's say somebody said, hey, John, I can build you a completely dynamic, interactive website with message boards and social networking and community, and I just want to do this because I love it and I'm turned on by hemp. Can they get in touch with you and say, I want to put my energy into this? Is that possible?
If they, anything is possible.
I'm trying to get the level of interactivity that people from the outside could contribute to your project.
Well, we're making this. For right now, info@johntrudell.com would be a place to get in touch with.
Okay.
info@johntrudell.com. But, see, before too long, the website will be interactive.
Okay. I was just using it as an example. But
I get that. But my understanding, because I'm not running the web, I'm pre-literate with computer stuff, so people that know what they're doing do this. But I can't remember the exact conversation, but I know we've turned it interactive, and I just imagine it may be interactive now, or if it's not, it will be in the next short period of time.
Okay. Good. So you got a birthday coming up next week, and you're still in the game. You're passionate. What's happening with you on the musical front, John?
Well, actually, we're mixing an album now, so we'll somehow, we got kind of slowed down on this because it's pay as you go sometimes, right? And but I don't like to go in over my, I don't like to be owing stuff out.
Right.
So, but we're mixing our latest album. So sometime in the next, what is this, February? So I figure by spring we'll have another album out, and then we want to go and start the next one. So so stuff is still happening there, and doing some band work here and there at times, and so all of that's staying active.
Oh, good, excellent. That's good news. And you're going to be down in LA at the Living Expo or where are you going to be speaking on hemp? It's in LA soon, right?
Yeah, it's at the Conscious Life Expo, and it's at the LAX Hilton.
Okay.
That's where the expo is, and I'm speaking Sunday afternoon, around 2:00.
Okay. Well, good news. Well, John, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show and, finding us, and through the internet and getting on here and taking time to share your vision, and love to have you back on, maybe when your new album comes out, and we can talk more about hemp and check in and see where the project is.
Yeah, see where everything's at.
Yeah. All right. Well,
All right, man.
You take care and stay strong, John.
All right, you too, man.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, that was John Trudell, the legendary John Trudell, giving us some 411 on consciousness as it relates to energy, making decisions, being clear. And I think the line of the day is, whoever wants it more. That's what it really boils down to. Am I right? How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Do you want it bad enough to make it a vision, a reality? The other great line is, if you have to convince somebody, you can't trust them. I'll never forget that one. All right. Well, my next guest is somebody that I don't have to convince, and I can certainly trust. She's a friend, and I've known her since my son was, I think, 2. He's 8 now, so he's 6. So 6 years. I've known Debbie for 6 years, although we haven't really been in close physical proximity. We do connect through Facebook from time to time. And Debby Goldsberry is a very strident advocate and activist in the realm of medicinal marijuana. She was named the Woman of the Year twice by NORML, National Organization for the Redemption of Marijuana Laws, or the Redemption of Marijuana Laws. I think that's what NORML stands for. And she is got a whole list of awards for her tireless work in the realm of medical marijuana advocacy. So let's bring her on right now, my good friend Debby Goldsberry, and let's find out what's happening in the world of medicinal marijuana. Hey, Debbie.
Hello.
Hey, it's good to hear you.
Yes, very good to hear you as well.
Yeah. So when our 2 little kids crossed paths at preschool, did you ever think that we'd be together on a radio show talking about this?
No way. This is totally no. Because kids and cannabis don't mix that much. So when you're a cannabis user, even a medical cannabis user in a state where it's legal, even at a place like where my daughter went to school with your son for preschool, a very supportive environment, it's just something you keep quiet about, for your own safety. You never know when Child Protective Services is going to decide that your use of cannabis is not copacetic with their idea of what a good parent should be. Despite, of course, that I have an A student and a very healthy child and everything like that. So, yeah, here we are. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, good to hear you. So why don't we just jump right in on this? Over the past year and a half to 2 years, well, first of all, California really set the tone in some ways for medicinal marijuana, and there was kind of a real boom when it came to opening dispensaries and growing. And then all of a sudden, I would say probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago, the feds started to get very heavy and started to make life very difficult for people. And we've only got, roughly about 25 minutes or so, and I'm sure it's a very complicated issue. But can you give people kind of a 40,000-foot view on where medical marijuana is right now in a state, by the way, where it was passed to be legal and available to people that need it?
Yeah, well, obviously the federal government isn't following the will of the people. If you ask voters across the United States, 80% of them or more support the legalization of medical cannabis for people who need it. Yet the federal government, the people in our legislatures and the people in Congress, they're failing to meet the mandate of the citizens. That's what we voted them, that's their job. It's their constitutional mandate. So I think it's fell all around from the government point of view that for some reason, cowardice, that our own government officials have failed us on this. Of course, the citizens of the U.S. have to get really concerned when the government doesn't follow the will of the people in such a big way. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing an ever-growing support for medical cannabis, because nobody can wrap their head around the disconnect between the fact that medical cannabis is obviously a medicine and the fact that Congress and our state governments aren't acting to change the laws. So in California, what happened is, we passed that law almost 16 years ago, and we've been fighting our state government and the feds to implement it. It's still not implemented all the way. People in California still don't have across-the-board safe access to medical cannabis 16 years later. Well, the feds thought, hey, we're going to give it our all, and we're just going to crush this thing out, because they got wind, that the movement to legalize cannabis was afloat, and that if they didn't do something before that caught people's attention in a positive way, that maybe cannabis was going to be legalized, not just medical cannabis. So the feds started to pick up that there were campaigns in Washington State and Colorado and Oregon, to crack down, to legalize adult personal use of cannabis. And a strategy that they undertook was, well, if we can disrupt the movements in California where Prop 19 and the legalization of cannabis emanated from, if we can take out the leaders of that campaign, crush them out, destroy their lives, take their assets, scare them, scare all their friends, take them all to jail, put them all under watch, maybe the voters in Colorado and Washington and the leaders won't vote for legalizing marijuana. I mean, that is so criminal when a government goes so out of control as to threaten its own citizens who are doing nothing more than following democracy with arrest, incarceration, and the theft of their belongings. So in California, we recognized it for what it was, bully tactics. And, on our playgrounds, when somebody's being bullied, you really have to stand up. So our community government stood up behind medical cannabis and said, I'm sorry, you're not going to crush out medical cannabis like a bunch of bullies violating the law. And our city government stood up, our citizens and our voters stood up. And, now in California, we're going to legalize cannabis as a result of this federal crackdown. So the government needs to just get over it. They're never going to win. Prohibition's over. It's just a matter of time until they catch up. And right now, because of the disconnect, it's costing a lot of money, and people are still going to jail, and families are being destroyed. But we're very hardy, and we're going to win.
So essentially what's happening here is that as a result of the efforts to threaten and bully, discourage, whatever you want to use, people are getting more strident and becoming more determined and resolute, and it's having a kind of a backfire on the federal government, and now they're staring down legalization. So in essence, what's taking place is their worst nightmare.
Exactly. And, the constitutional systems of checks and balances, this thing is making it into the judicial system in a way that's very positive. The federal government already know they can't get criminal convictions for medical cannabis. You're never going to put a patient or a caregiver, before a jury of their peers and get a conviction, or rarely. I guess it happens every once in a while, unfortunately, still in some of our less supportive counties in California. So yeah, they just go after the assets and they bully people and they try and scare people. But what's happened now is that asset forfeiture, as it turns out, which is not criminal, it's civil. So there's generally no jury of our peers in an asset forfeiture case where they just come and take your money. They can either send you to jail through the criminal courts, or they can send you to civil courts and take your assets. That's the two, so-called remedies the government uses. Well, the latest asset forfeiture case, the Harborside Health Center case, where the federal government's trying to close down California's biggest medical marijuana collective, they have fought their case so hard through the lower courts and through the administrative processes, they are actually getting a jury of their peers on the asset forfeiture case. So pretty soon the federal government's going to find out that despite their every effort and the fact that the legislative branch is failing us due to cowardice, that and in the judicial branch, the jury of our peers is going to take control, and the system of checks and balances is going to work. Now, unfortunately, when it goes up the chain of command to the Supreme Court, either at the California level or the state or the federal level, well, we're still finding that the justices defer back to the legislatures and Congress and say things like, we can't do anything until Congress changes the law. totally false. And again, another failure of our democracy. They are supposed to represent the voters.
They can assign a president, right? They can say a president has won, but they can't make a decision based on pre-existing law, which I find very hard to believe.
I don't get it either, And this one, I think that it's just part of it is that it's really empowering people to remember that we are ultimately the government, and it's us that's in charge. And so I think it's really helpful for democracy to have these kind of, irritants, because it really makes a stronger group of citizens. So yeah. I'd rather have pot legal and everything like that, but it's going to be a heck of a good thing once pot is legal. And we've gone through this whole entire school of democracy forced on us by the federal government. I think it's going to be a really great thing.
So when you set out to do this, you didn't really set out to become a kind of a political torchbearer. You set out to be able to help people and have a medicinal marijuana dispensary because you saw the benefits of this. But along the way, you have gotten politically aware. Am I right about that?
Well, the medical cannabis, I was involved before the medical cannabis issue became really the big issue. Medical cannabis is so important because people's lives are being saved, health is being improved, and there's a lot of people who are suffering needlessly. So it's like the very first most important thing that we have to accomplish, because we have to get rid of a whole swath of suffering that we can get rid of, with the most amount of ease possible. It's not easy to get medical cannabis, but it's an obvious way and a successful way to ease suffering. But I think the bigger issue really, besides medical cannabis, is, the fact that so many people are being incarcerated for cannabis. 1 million people a year almost are arrested for cannabis. And we've even got people serving mandatory sentences in federal prison for just simple possession of cannabis. It's absurd. But when I got involved, it was back in the 80s, and my college campus in Illinois, the University of Illinois, we had this big smoke-in for 20 years. But in the mid-'80s, Reagan decided to crack down on college campuses. And so where it had been peace and love for my freshman year and my sophomore year, and it was a really fun event and thousands of people attended, the next year the police came with billy clubs and literally clubbed the same people that were doing nothing more than just smoking cannabis. So it was a complete disconnect on every level for me. I was in college. I was supposed to be thinking about these issues. It made absolutely no sense to me that the police could club innocent people for using cannabis. So I got involved from the social justice issue. But, early on, my best friend, at the time a woman named Cypress, got breast cancer and was using medical cannabis to treat her symptoms. And this is before we made it legal in California. So not only was she, she actually died from breast cancer, but she was just suffering so much from the condition, but she was so afraid of going to jail all the time for using medical cannabis. It was just unthinkable for me, so I tried to be her advocate for medical cannabis and spokesperson for her and her rights, because it's so much suffering to suffer from cancer. You should never have to add the fear of being arrested for the use of the medicine that's really helping you. And for Cypress, what she told me is that she was on morphine, everything you could imagine, but she said when she used the cannabis, that suddenly she felt like she had her soul again. And it was so important to her as a part of her final transition that the suffering that came along with using the cannabis was just unthinkable. So it did start me on a whole path and a career of helping people gain access to medical cannabis without having to suffer for it.
Right. Wow, that's a pretty profound story, and quite a gift she actually gave you. She gave you kind of a life path as a result of her connection with you. Wow. It's really interesting. I remember one time I was driving. I think I was driving down. I think it might have been College, or no, it was Shattuck. I think it was I was driving down Shattuck, and I was at a stoplight at Shattuck, and I watched this young black guy get into a car at the stoplight, and then the car drove a block, and at the next stoplight, the young black guy got out, and the car kept going, and I caught up to the car, and I looked, and it was this little old lady, And I thought to myself, well, what just happened there? What just went down? And it was like, I know what went down. She probably bought medicinal marijuana, and this was years ago before there was any kind of legalization. And I thought to myself, this for a woman like this, not that she was in any danger or anything, but there's got to be a better way for her to be able to have this experience. But I'll never forget that moment. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, and even now, there's so many people that are in that generation, 65 and over, that would benefit from medical cannabis, that even when you tell them and show them the scientific studies that show that if you use cannabis, one puff of cannabis a day is enough to prevent Alzheimer's. And for somebody 65 and over to imagine taking a puff of cannabis a day, even if it's going to prevent Alzheimer's and it's been proven, it's such a big stigma for them to cross the line into being a cannabis user. It's absolutely something we have to work on. We have to get the education out about cannabis as medicine, and then we have to make it socially acceptable or something, so that we can reach senior citizens. Cannabis prevents Alzheimer's and cancer. Certainly people should be using cannabis. A puff a day is enough. Let's get it legal and make sure that people have access to these preventative medicines. We need our vitamin D, our C, our cannabinoids, our juice, our fresh food. It's just a part of life here on Earth.
One of the things that I think I sent you this video a while ago was this young woman who had a myriad of diseases and debilitating conditions, and she was juicing the raw leaves, and her comeback, her return to normal health was miraculous. Can you talk a little bit about the raw leaf juicing aspect of cannabis as well?
Yeah, let's see. Cannabis, a lot of people don't know there's an endocannabinoid system. That means within our body, our own body is making cannabinoids. The THC and the CBD, the things that kind of get you high in cannabis, are also produced inside of our body. It's a natural part of humans to have these molecules in our body. It regulates in our body, the endocannabinoid system regulates stress, irritation. It's responsible for not sweating the little things. If we didn't have an endocannabinoid system, we'd be worried about everything. So it helps get thoughts in their proper order in our mind. A whole bunch of different things when you really start researching the endocannabinoids within our body. The cannabinoids produced by the plant come in two forms. A natural form, it's called the acid form, and then after you heat it up, it's not an acid anymore. So you have THCA, and after it's heated, you have THC. And they both share similar principles in the medical effect that they have, but when you juice the fresh cannabis leaves and you get the THCA and you drink it just like you would a wheatgrass every day, well, it won't get you high because it's the process of heating it that changes THCA to THC. THC is what gets you high, for lack of a scientific word for it, and just so people know what I mean, I guess. But the THCA is an anti-irritant. It is also health. It's disease preventative. And for the woman that you're referring to, because she suffered from a condition that was producing a sort of a system-wide irritant, and I don't know that much about her specific condition, but what I do know is that the THCA was extremely helpful in producing an overall effect that created a function of good health within her body. So it improves your immune system, it reduces irritation, improves health, and prevents disease. And some people call the high a negative side effect. A lot of people don't. They like that. But for people that don't like that, you can get the medical benefits by juicing. Now, the problem is there's not any cannabis around to juice. Because it's like almost illegal even in medical cannabis states, and people aren't growing the cannabis for juicing. When they grow it for the whole plant medicines at the end that people are going to, heat up and combust and get.
So they're really working on the buds versus the leaf, right?
Yes, and if in a place that we could, say, cultivate an acre of cannabis and produce an ongoing source of these leaves, then it would become reasonable for people to juice the cannabis for that kind of medical benefit. And it would be great if we saw medical cannabis dispensaries and different places like that start, providing fresh juice on site for people to come in for their little shot of the THC a cannabis juice in the mornings.
Yeah.
And that would be great. But that's not feasible because of prohibition.
It's a remarkable story. What do you think people in Washington and Colorado have to look forward to now that they've passed this legislation?
Well, getting the legislation implemented is always a challenge, so it's going to be a few years while the regulations are put in place and while the market forces bear out. For example, in a free market where everybody can get a license for cannabis to produce it, to grow it, to sell it, to make baked goods or tinctures, the market will become very flooded at first because everybody has, well, I can't speak for all people who use cannabis, but, we all envision at some point down the line when it's legal, we'll have our own cannabis business and, we'll have a tidy living and everything will be fine. But the fact is, if everybody goes and gets a license at the same time and puts up a little business, nobody's going to make any money. So right. in those states where those standard market forces will come to bear over the course of a few years, I suspect it'll be like a gold rush, a boom, a bust, and along the course of that time we'll be implementing the regulations, and then things will even out. So I think we'll see a good, solid industry with people having good jobs and solid incomes and very fresh, nice, pure, safe cannabis on the marketplace, and with everything settling down maybe in 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. And do you think that they're going to be able to do this without a lot of outside interference, or do you see kind of what's been happening in California taking place in Washington and Colorado, but albeit a little bit differently because what was passed is obviously differently?
Well, I've heard it called the push-down pop-up effect. It's like they crack down in California, we got Washington and Colorado. They crack down in Washington and Colorado, we're going to get California, Oregon, you name it, a couple other states will come on board. The feds just are going to have to eventually follow the Constitution and the will of the citizens here and allow prohibition to end. There's a lot of economic reasons why this thing is dragging out, with our opposition being the pharmaceutical industries and the private prison corporations and police officers who get to take home the spoils of their asset forfeiture cases actually as bonuses in their own pockets.
You're kidding.
No, I don't know. A lot of people don't know that, but when they do these civil asset forfeitures, the money actually goes into a pool that's split up. The police department takes this much, the feds take this much, and the cops take this much home in their own pockets. It's absolutely being economically driven by people who are doing it for greed purposes, and the citizens are picking up on that knowledge. So, everyone's wondering, why is this taking so long? Obviously everyone wants it. Well, it's because of greed and money. I think we can look to that for the root of a lot of problems, and here we are again with that same old problem. So we have to expose the economic interests that keep prohibition going forward. We have to root them out and not accept that as something that we can agree with. And I think it's going to happen. So it's really up to individuals, people. We got to get this job done ourselves. We're going to have to vote the laws in ourselves. We're going to have to implement the laws ourselves. We're going to create the businesses ourselves. And I don't know. If the cops want to switch over to working in the cannabis industry, there'll probably be a good job for them. Prison guards can watch over the cultivation fields where we're going to grow our juices. So.
I love it. Debby, if you ever run for public office and you're in the state that I'm in, you get my vote, let me tell you.
Oh, you're so nice. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Well, keep up the good work. You are incredibly well-informed, positive, passionate, and I think we're absolutely blessed to have you out here on this issue, making life better for people. So thanks for all your work, Debby. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Robert. And people can find me on Facebook. As you know, I'm always there. So just Debby Goldsberry, look me up and come say hi.
And she's a friend of mine, too, so you can if you are a friend of mine, you can friend Debby as well. Just
That's right.
My friends. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Robert. I'll talk to you later.
Bye, Debby.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Debby Goldsberry. Wow. Wasn't that great? What a clarion call she has, and an absolute beacon of clarity as well. All right. So we had John Trudell breaking down the metaphysics of energy and choice. Then we have Debby coming in and really bringing some strong advocacy and knowledge around the medicinal marijuana experience. First-hand knowledge, too. She's on the front lines and has been since the 80s. And now it's my pleasure to bring on the third part of today's triumvirate, the wonderful Willow from north of the border, and we're going to talk about Ceres Direct, but also we're going to talk about alfalfa and why you need to know about what's happening with alfalfa. So from Debbie to Willow, here we go. Let's bring her right on. Hey, Willow.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm great.
Wow, you have a hop-in little phone line system going on today.
Yeah, it is hot. This is the place to be on Blog Talk today, let me tell you.
You bet.
Yeah, so how are you?
Doing pretty well. Just working on this Stop GM Alfalfa campaign.
Well, let's get into that.
Nose to the grindstone.
Let's get into it. We've got 29 minutes left, so let's burn on this. Obviously, there's the astrological angle, which you want to talk about, Ceres Direct, but let's get into the mechanics of this thing. Why don't you give people kind of a flyover and tell them what's happening with the genetically modified alfalfa?
Sure. It's kind of a complicated matter, but I'll give you the basic rundown. In January 2011, genetically modified alfalfa was approved unconditionally by the USDA in a hugely controversial decision, opposed by every organic farmer in Canada and the United States, every organic eater in Canada and the United States, and probably the majority of just regular, conventional non-GM agriculture as well, opposed by all of those people. So for the past 2 growing seasons, your country, unfortunately, has been planting, people in your country have been planting genetically modified alfalfa. And what genetically modified alfalfa is, this particular strain is created by Monsanto, our friend Monsanto, and it's been basically bioengineered so that the plants will withstand its chemical herbicide, which is Roundup. Roundup is the most popular chemical herbicide in the world, and its usage globally is set to double by 2017. So basically the situation is that, as you probably know with genetically modified organisms, period, they have been pretty much untested before being sort of rushed onto the market, and they're sort of trying to become the industry standard, I would say, at this point, so that like organic agriculture is the fringe agriculture and genetically modified agriculture is the standard. So weird situation we're in right now. In Canada, where I am, this is a critical juncture because they haven't introduced genetically modified alfalfa yet, but they are planning to do so as early as this growing season in Ontario and Quebec. And the reason they're introducing it in Ontario and Quebec is because the prairie provinces in Canada have already wholeheartedly rejected genetically modified alfalfa. It makes no sense. It makes no financial sense to introduce genetically modified alfalfa. Currently in Canada, okay, you know what? And before I go into that, I'm actually going to tell people why they should care about contamination of alfalfa by genetically modified strains. Okay, because I understand that people are very disconnected from their food sources in a lot of cases, especially people who live in cities, and they may not understand why they should care about this. Okay, so genetically modified, alfalfa itself is a staple livestock feed. So basically, if you eat meat, if you eat cheese, if you eat eggs, honey's a different scenario, but if you eat any of these food products, you're going to be exposed to genetically modified material, because what we feed our animals, we end up feeding ourselves, right? So it's through the food chain. So genetically modified alfalfa becomes alfalfa hay. It's baled. It's a crop that is grown. It's mostly feral, so it's mostly a wild crop. And in Canada, it's aside from a few genetically modified test plots, it's a purely natural crop. Only 7% of the alfalfa is currently sprayed at all. 93% of alfalfa in Canada is not sprayed at all. Okay, so basically the scenario is that we cut and bale alfalfa, and that becomes feed for a range of farm animals, livestock, right? And which will eventually move through the food chain. Okay, so you might have vegans out there saying, well, I'm a vegan, so I don't care, it doesn't bother me. Well, it actually affects vegans as well, because even if you don't eat animal products, alfalfa is used as a fertilizer for soil because it naturally fixes nitrogen in the soil. So if you have contamination of by genetically modified strains, you are then going to have genetically modified alfalfa and material in the soil. Basically, it's impossible to remove it at that point. And if you can't have soil that is certified organic soil, you don't have organic food, right? So this basically has the possibility of wiping out the entire foundation of organic agriculture, because alfalfa is used as a fertilizer in what's widely used as a fertilizer in organic agriculture. So basically, this is also a soil quality issue. It's also an issue related to the use of more chemicals, right? More Roundup, more herbicides.
Right.
And then it's also an issue with the changing the genetic composition of food. This is really what this has the possibility of doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so it's big. So let's just say it's a big story. It's a big one.
Just step back for a second. Let's just think about what they would use in order to genetically modify the alfalfa in order to resist Roundup. I mean, think about that for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a scary thought because Roundup is deadly.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever is in that alfalfa can resist Roundup. Do you have any idea what they're genetically modifying alfalfa with?
I don't know that. The only thing I know is that, like you're saying, that if you're creating a plant that can absorb that level of chemical and not have any effects, that's not natural. That's not normal.
No.
So I don't know the specific genes. But basically, what genetic modification is splicing genes from a certain plant or animal into another plant or animal where that would not naturally occur, right? So they've probably found some gene that, in some, I don't know, plant or animal that resists this certain, some of the ingredients in Roundup, and they've slapped her right in there.
And they can cross splice genes too. I mean, they can do all kinds of crazy Atlantean stuff with this technology now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we're in the dark of the moon in Aquarius. So when better to talk about the dark side of technology, right?
This has been actually a really enlightening show in terms of these topics. So we've got this issue at hand. It's in Canada. It's a big deal in Canada. People in the United States, we're already kind of screwed. We've got to figure.
Well, no. I mean, that's the thing is you're not already screwed because it's only been grown for 2 years.
Okay.
So the thing about genetically modified alfalfa is that it's a perennial. Okay, alfalfa is a perennial crop. So this is why it's different from the other crops that the Monsanto and the genetically modified corporations have put out there thus far. Because a perennial crop is a crop that comes back year after year. You don't have to replant it, right? Mm-hmm. It's also feral. So what that means is it basically grows like a weed. It cross-pollinates like a weed. So it'll spread like crazy. It cross-pollinates through the wind and through insects. So basically, it's going to get out there. But the situation is it's not like it's instantaneous contamination, right? This is going to take like a decade or two probably to infiltrate the natural alfalfa. Mm-hmm. So no, it's absolutely not too late. And the thing is that this is actually a criminal situation in my books because the head of the U.S. or so the Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture currently and at the time when GM alfalfa was approved in January 2011 is Tom Vilsack. And Tom Vilsack is the ex-governor of Iowa. Iowa is a U.S. Corn Belt state, as I'm sure you know, where Monsanto's GM corn is big business, right? Huge business. So Tom Vilsack is a GMO proponent. he has sort of made life easy for Monsanto and for those corporations on both a state level and now at a federal level, right?
Right.
And oh, this is funny. When he was governor of Iowa, he was actually named Governor of the Year by the Biotechnology Industry Association in 2001. So this is how pro-GMO this guy really is. Right. And he is, surprise, surprise, implanted as the head of the USDA under Obama, so that this GMO alfalfa can be unleashed on the population. So yes, it has been growing in the U.S. for the past 2 years, but it's by far, the case is not closed. You're not screwed. You're not screwed. And in Canada, we're just kind of, we're at that last stand, right, where our Western Canadian farmers have already rejected GM alfalfa, and now they're trying to get their foot in the door further east. Mm-hmm. And so really what we can do in Canada is so we have a conservative government, big C conservative government in Canada right now, and they're the major proponents of biotechnology, agricultural biotechnology and GMOs. And but the Liberals and the NDPs, so both of the opposing parties, favor a moratorium on genetically modified alfalfa. Okay, so basically, if we can get enough conservative on the agenda, then it's very likely that we can actually get a moratorium pushed through on this genetically modified alfalfa. And the thing about all of this GMO stuff is where there are strides forward in certain areas, it benefits all other areas, right? So not only can we get a moratorium through in Canada, we can actually push this issue right through into the States and get this stuff right out of the States.
Well, that's great news. So
yeah. So it's not it's not a done deal by any means.
So how can people participate in this? How can they lend their support either financially or energetically? Where can they go, Willow?
I think the number one thing would be just to educate themselves on this issue, to know that this is a major, major issue going on, that the mainstream media has, for the most part, ignored it completely, that there is huge opposition for this. So I think that it's good for people to understand that, the opposition to this has always been vocal, it's always been vital, it's always been very energetic, right? So you can easily place yourself in that opposition and get things moving. In Canada, what I have going on is a letter to the editor campaign, and I've extended that also to the United States. So basically, we just want to get this into the media. We want to get people understanding this and talking about this and understanding why this is a huge, huge issue, because really we are talking about the future of food and the future of whether food's going to be natural or not natural. This is kind of the line in the sand. So you can actually contact me for that letter if you'd like. I've also got it posted on my forum, which is called the Wicked Web, and people can just copy that and send it to their local newspapers. I have a primer on genetically modified alfalfa that can be emailed around to people. It can also be sent out as a press release directly to local media. What you can also do is literally just call your congressman, call your congressperson, and tell them that you oppose GM alfalfa and you want to know, you would like them to bring forward a motion for a moratorium on genetically modified alfalfa. In the States, of course, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you're having to claw back something that was already approved. Yeah. And you also have top-level executives that are, pro-GMO to the hilt. So yeah, it's tricky. We're not in an easy situation on this planet on any front, as we probably all know, right? Yeah. So I think just getting the word out, getting educated about it, and then it's also a matter of food choices. Okay, so as of right now, you can look into where genetically modified alfalfa is being grown, mm-hmm. and you can lobby that state, but you can also make food choices based on that. At this point, organic meats, organic dairy, and organic eggs are probably the best possibility for eating GMO free. Yeah. Because the crops that have been widely contaminated are corn, canola, soybeans, and in the States now, sugar beets. So those are kind of the big four, and sugar beets has only been more recently grown. But basically, because these GMOs have been rushed onto the market without sort of due diligence, the scenario is that anything that is not organic, you can be pretty sure that there is some level of GMO contamination, because the problem is that GMOs are not kept separate from non-GMO crops, right? So once you grow it, once the farmer grows it and they take it in and sell it, it's all mishmashed together. It's all put together, right? GM and non-GM is all put together, and which is completely insane. But the organic system is the only system that has any separation. So the organic system is still kept separate. There's a concerted effort to keep it separate. So there's that, and then there's, just getting more aware of where your food is coming from. The big issue that I've been having is people literally just don't understand why contaminated hay would have any effect on them. They just don't understand it. Because people are literally that disconnected from their food that they don't understand that what we feed our animals, we eventually feed us, as long as we're eating animal products, right?
Yeah, no.
So,
alfalfa would be the killer virus of the mainframe. It's
totally.
It's
the foundation for everything. So once you contaminate the foundation for everything, it's over. It's wiped out. And literally, this is why organic farmers and organic eaters are so. And the thing is, it's not even a matter of just organic agriculture. It's a matter of like natural agriculture versus non-natural agriculture. That's really what it is. So you can focus on organics as far as, that's sort of what's the safest bet to eat right now, But this goes way beyond just organics. This is really the future of food and the future of agriculture, period. So, and then the other thing that's going on, this is tied into the series transit also, is the first long-term animal feeding trial study on genetically modified corn and glyphosate. Did you see the results of that?
I glanced over them, but it was not good.
So, no. Basically, this is the first ever long-term feeding trial done on anything genetically modified. Up until this point, you know how long the testing periods have been? 90 days.
Oh, 90
days.
Okay.
Yeah, 90 days. And that's enough to say, okay, we're going to unleash this in the food supply,
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, there was a study done in France. It was a 2-year study done. It was feeding laboratory rats genetically modified corn and glyphosate, which is the primary ingredient in Roundup. And what it found was disturbing. Basically, more than twice as likely, the animals fed the GM corn and the glyphosate either together or separately, and even at levels considered safe by the industry, were much more likely, like more than twice as likely, to develop tumors, to experience organ damage, and to die prematurely.
I've seen pictures of rats, and they're not pretty.
Where it looks like they've actually grown another rat and it's a tumor?
Yeah.
That's the study. And so the results of the study were published in September 2012 when Ceres was on 28-29 degrees Gemini. And so Ceres has just retrograded back and forth over that point and will be on that point direct again at the end of March, beginning of April. So again, that's the beginning of the growing season, right? So these test results really have to latch on in the public's imagination, because this is something that should have been a huge story, but it got a little bit of play in the media, but nowhere near what it should have. Because in light of those test results, the green lighting of genetically modified alfalfa without any testing is, doubly insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's ironic around all of this is if you sat down with, people at upper echelons of the government, wherever they may be, Congress, Senate, they're all going to eat really good food. They're all going to eat.
Oh yeah. No, this is just for the masses.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's more of the same, unfortunately, is what's been happening over the course of the last decade or so. While this is alarming, it's one of the issues that theoretically everybody can agree upon. You know, I mean,
you bet.
You don't believe in gay marriage or not. You don't have to believe in guns or not. Well, everybody theoretically should agree on their food. I mean, you know, eating natural, organic food is it's our right and our livelihood on this planet. So if you can't agree upon any of the other big issues that are driving a wedge in our culture, at least agree upon food. It's fundamental.
Absolutely. And if you actually took a poll, if you actually gave people the facts and did a poll, you would find the overwhelming majority doesn't want genetically modified organisms in their food, you know. And a lot of this came up actually with Proposition 37 in your state.
My ex-state.
Oh, you don't live in California anymore?
No.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Oh, well, surprising.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, well, yeah, Proposition 37 in California. So, that's another scenario where, Monsanto and the other GMO corporations funded a massive advertising campaign attacking genetically modified labeling, right? And unfortunately succeeded in turning the tide. But before that advertising campaign was going on, I mean, there was a vast majority of people who were for the labeling of GMOs in food, and I think that would be across the board. I mean, I think that there's always a strong majority who would prefer labeling, and also who would just prefer not to have it. Period. It makes no economic sense because right now, alfalfa is like a precious national crop in Canada, you know, and I mean it was in the States. So my heart goes out to you in the U.S. as well. But this is a precious national resource, is our natural alfalfa crop, and to have a company just come in and expose it to complete ruin it's just unimaginable. You know, it's unimaginable what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it also leads to the genetic modification of the species and the inside-out application of transhumanism, and this is what it's all about.
Totally. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I mean, and all you have to do is look at what Monsanto has done. Agent Orange, it's the producer of Agent Orange. And if you want to look at like chromosome damage and just breaking a genetic line, like breaking people's genetic lines, you look no further than Agent Orange. You know, and that's the thing, is that all of these major genetically modified there's 6 major GMO corporations, and it is Monsanto, Bayer, DuPont, Dow, BASF, and Syngenta. And all but Syngenta are actually chemical corporations that have a long and twisted history with the military-industrial complex.
That's right.
So we're talking chlorine gas, mustard gas, napalm, Agent Orange, Manhattan Project. We're talking all of the most heinous crimes against humanity. These corporations have their finger in it, you know. These are not food companies. These are not agricultural companies. These are chemical companies, again, with ties to the military-industrial complex, who we are now inviting to take over our food supply. You know, that's the scenario that's going on, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a genetic attack. It's an attack on our DNA, and it's an attack on just natural humans. Period. You know.
Yeah.
Our biology.
An interesting side note to Monsanto, before they were involved in the military-industrial complex, they were also involved in the slave trade back in...
Oh, really? Yeah, it doesn't surprise me whatsoever, but that's interesting.
Slave trading family in New Orleans, which is where they set up shop. So, well, there we go. Well, Willow, listen, it's been great to have you on the show, and your passion and your energy and your intelligence are, I think, a perfect antidote to what's happening up there in Canada and here in the States. And I want to thank you for your tireless work. And where can people connect with you and get involved more?
They can check out my website. It's willowsweb.blogspot.com, or you can just Google Willow's Web. My email address is there, and I have a forum where I've been covering it, which is called the Wicked Web. So you can just Google that. So.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you for coming on, and
thanks for having me.
Maybe we can come back again, in a couple of months or so. We'll check in, and we'll see where you guys are with this, and if there's been any headway made. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, Willow.
No problem. Bye, Robert.
Bye-bye. Well, that was an absolutely amazing 120 minutes. I mean, we got off a little bit on the slow start there, waiting for John to come on board and talk about hemp. But we went from hemp and the legalization of hemp and John's efforts, and not just his efforts, but understanding sort of the consciousness behind it and the consciousness behind making choices, the energy, and a full body approach, mind, body, spirit approach. And then we had Debby Goldsberry and bringing her clarity and her tireless work in activism, her optimism, absolutely great. And then the fire of Willow with the alfalfa issue. And these are all three very important organic, naturally occurring plants that are part of our human story. I mean, if you think about it, you go back in time, if you go back into the caves, there are caves that are just located near Lascaux, and there are actual paintings on the caves where they show men, actually taking cannabis and putting it over the fire and fanning the fire so they could get high, so they could not just get high, but feel more relaxed with the immensity of the world around them, the night, the primal quality of night, the animals, the dreaming that would occur. So this is a part of our story. Cannabis is a part of our story. Hemp, I'm sure that if you go back to the Mesopotamians and the Phoenicians and the great sailors, from Morocco and West Africa and the Horn, that these guys were using hemp sails to travel all over the planet. So hemp is a part of our story. And alfalfa is the most basic and fundamental grass and grain that we've been feeding our livestock and the animals that give their lives to sustain us. So all three of these elements are incredibly fundamental and a part of who we are. And today we brought on three people that were able to shed some light as to where we are with keeping them alive, bringing them back, or sustaining their original potency and integrity. So I want to thank everybody that was a part of the show today, John Trudell, Debby Goldsberry, and Willow from Canada. Monday, thank you. Monday, I'm going to have Brian Tuohy on, and we're going to go back and we're going to look at the Super Bowl, and we're going to look at a very strange and surreal Super Bowl and the potential for that Super Bowl being fixed. That's Super Bowl 47. And I'll be looking at it once again from an esoteric point of view. So it'll be an hour show. Brian will be on for half an hour. He'll be doing his thing, and I'll break down some more of the Super Bowl in the back end of it from my world. So don't miss Monday, Brian Tuohy, author of The Fix Is In. And then next Friday, Alfred Labrador Weber, he'll be on the show, and we'll be dropping down into the world of exopolitics. So you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Friday Farcast with John Trudell, Debby Goldsberry, Willow, and myself. I'll see you on Monday. Have an amazing weekend. Stay natural.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.